This is Eddie Hearn, Matchroom Boxing. You are watching Sporting Icons. You don't need to be anywhere else.
Okay, everyone, I hope you're all doing fantastic. Now, in this video, pay no mind to what's happening on the screen there. These random pictures I threw in there just for someone to put in there, okay? But the subject is more important than what's actually on the screen right now, okay? Now, I see a lot of comments daily, and I've been seeing them for a long, long time comparing this era to previous eras. Previous eras, everybody fought everybody. In this era, nobody seems to be fighting each other. Now, I can't argue with that because it's true. But there's a reason behind it. Now, is that killing the sport? In some ways, yes, it is. Okay, we don't get enough big fights compared to what we used to get. But at the same time, you have to remember, we are currently in an era where social media is prevalent. Interviews are happening with managers, promoters, boxers, trainers. Everybody involved in boxing are doing interviews. So we are kept up to speed with everything. We know everything, things that we have no business knowing about, but we know about them. Okay, in years gone by, we didn't have social media. Okay, I remember as a kid in the late 80s, early 90s and that, only knowing about fights when they appeared on the back of the Sun newspaper or the News of the World and that, for example. I didn't know anything about negotiations. I didn't know that certain fights or what fights fell through. We didn't know. Nowadays, we do know. So maybe back in the days, not everybody did fight everybody at the times when people wanted them to fight. But who's to say? Because we didn't have social media to air our fans' opinions. We didn't have it. Nowadays, we do. All right? Now, for the most part, it's true. It is true. A lot of great fights happened in the past. Some people say that this current era will not go down as a golden era. I disagree with that. I think it will. I think in years to come, people will look back on this era and say, you know what? It was pretty good. I'll give you one thing that's happened right now that I think has gone over the head of a lot of people. We've had more unifications and undisputed champions in this particular era over the last few years than we have done in a long, long time. But we as boxing fans, we tend to focus on what we're not getting compared to what we are getting. But some of the fighters in the past who say that, well, they used to fight everybody and anybody. And okay, how many of those fighters who did all that left the sport with their faculties in check, their health, and money in the bank? How many? Unfortunately, not a lot of them. Some of your favourite fighters probably didn't even have 2 pennies to rub together. Now, is that down to bad management? You betcha, of course it was. Of course it was. Did many fighters get ripped off? Yeah. So that means that in today's era, fighters have learned the most valuable lesson of the past eras: be businessmen. Look after the pennies. The pennies will turn into pounds and all that kind of good stuff. The cents will turn into dollars. So you look after your money. You take fights at the right time. This is what boxers have learned from years gone by, and it's the right thing to do. Does it harm the sport as a boxing fan? Of course. Do we care how much a fight's getting paid? No. Do we care the fact that maybe they're not ready? Maybe things are going on in their personal lives and behind the scenes, and the trainers know about it, but we don't know about it. Do we care about any of that? No. You fight him. Don't want to hear anything else. You fight him. Now, even before coming into this era, because I think that this era only started in like the last 6 or 7 years ago, I will probably say. But even then, leading up to that, how many fighters who did go through wars? How many fighters that, can you mention here in the UK, that went through wars who ended up with not much? Even their health is deteriorating, whether it be through mental health, whether it be through physical abuse in the ring, for real hard rounds of sparring. And I'm sick to death of hearing some of these trainers talking about how their fighters always went to war in sparring. Oh, these were some of the best spars you've ever seen. What the fuck are you talking about? They shouldn't be. They shouldn't be. If they're going through it consistently, a fighter is a product of what you're teaching them. So you're teaching them to go through wars and getting punched in the head, which is ultimately going to hurt them down the line. That's the reality of it. There's not enough tech sparring going on. Nowadays, there is. Back in the days, not so much. Oh, they went to war. There's never a dull spar. Okay, well that shows that you're a shit trainer. Does it not? Of course it does. We can look at people like Kirkland Lang, for example. He fought so many people. After his career, what happened? What happened? He was forgotten about. Didn't have 2 pennies to rub together. Died miserably. Not so long ago he died. Look at, say, for example, Gary Sykes, for example. How many rounds of hard wars did he have in sparring? And then taking fights, especially in the later part of his career, that he shouldn't have been taking, like Liam Walsh and Luke Campbell and all these kind of ones. Look at the poor fella now, look at him. You tell me that he was trained correctly, managed correctly and all that kind of stuff. Listen, I'm not saying that they're all guilty. A fighter has to make his or her own decisions. Ultimately, and that's the reality, and that's a get-out clause for a lot of trainers, managers and promoters. Listen, promoters don't take too much blame. They don't need to. It's not their business whether or not your fighter's ready. It's their business to put on a show. It's their business to make money. Okay? So don't blame the promoters, blame the managers, blame the trainers. All right? Blame them. They're the ones who say yes to the fights. But listen, that's the problem with today's era. But it's a reality of it. They are businessmen now. They have learned from the past. They've learned from it. The health and safety nowadays is far better than what it once was. It is. Listen, accidents happen. It's a brutal sport. Wilder is correct in one thing that he said. Your head is not meant to be hit. It's not meant to be hit. Which is why I like, for example, the Dominic Ingle gym, where sparring, for the most part, is body sparring. Because they're preserving the fighters. They're preserving them. They know how to fight. They know how to fight. But at the same time, you can never replicate a fight night anywhere even close. The closest thing is a spar. It is. It is. But in today's era, it is about fighters. Fighters will always have a fight down the line. They'll have a rival, for example. Yeah, that fight can happen in a couple of years' time. We'll build that fight. But how many of these fights actually get there? How many? Because fighters end up taking losses. Unnecessary losses. Broadcasters, promoters, messing with fighters. Even something simple like a ring walk can make that fighter end up losing the fight because their headspace is gone. It can. You mess with their music. It happens. They've just been divorced from their wife or their girlfriend or their husband, however. It can all be affected. Of course it can. Of course it can. But fighters nowadays, they have to live a certain way for popularity. It's almost like they work for us. They don't work for us. Not at all. A fighter should always work for his or herself. Again, and I've said this so many times, and I wish that fighters would actually listen to this particular point right now, which is your promoter, your manager, your trainer, your strength and conditioning coach, and all these other kind of people work for you. You are the boss. Okay? You are their boss. You don't listen to them. You can take advice, but you make the decision. You do not be pressured into something that you feel uncomfortable with because your manager or your trainer wants you to do it. No. You're the boss. You make the decision as to who it is that you're fighting. You make the decision to say yes or no for the money. You make that decision. Too many managers out there seem to forget that point as well, that the fighter works for them. Jog on, you work for the fighter. The fighter is the boss. People will look at some of the past fighters like Frank Bruno in that, for example. Yes, okay, he took losses along the way. He did. World title fights and everything. He did. Eventually he got a world title. Probably the best feeling I've ever had in boxing was when Frank Bruno defeated Oliver McCall to become the WBC World Heavyweight Champion. Okay, but along the way, he took some losses. And you know what? It was okay that he took some losses. It is okay. But you put Frank Bruno in this era, or somebody who goes through the same career path as Frank Bruno, they're on the scrap heap. They're bums. They're no good. They're garbage. So fighters are under pressure. They're under pressure. They're under pressure from fans. They're under pressure from promoters. They're under pressure from their own managers who just want to get their 25%. So the bigger the fight, the better. That's what they want. Don't get me wrong, there are some very, very good managers out there, who will not risk their fighter, who will advise them the right way. And props to you guys. People will talk about, for example, Carl Froch. Carl Froch, he fought everybody. Did he? What Hall of Famer did he defeat? What? Can you name one? Kessler, maybe. But Lennox Lewis, all-time great. In my opinion, arguably the best heavyweight of all time. But again, I'm not a historian, so I couldn't say that conclusively. But in my opinion, of what I know, I believe Lennox Lewis is the greatest. I do. The only fight that we can point to and say that didn't happen was Riddick Bowe. Was that down to Lennox Lewis? No, it wasn't. It was Riddick Bowe who threw the belt in the bin. It was. People, we can look at today's era, and we can look at Anthony Joshua and say, but Joshua, he hasn't fought Wilder. Joshua, he hasn't fought Fury. Okay, he bloody well tried. He offered them ridiculous amounts of money, and they didn't do it. Not my opinion, fact. Fact. People will look at Tyson Fury and say, well, you never fought Joshua. You never did this. You never did that. Even back in the day, he didn't fight David Price, for example, for the British. Again, because he's a very, very smart businessman. Don't listen to all this tripe about how he's a Spartan and he'll fight anybody anyway and any man born of his mother and all that. No, he's a businessman. He is a businessman. That's when he's doing his speeches up on stage and he's got his Furiosity energy drinks and he's selling his merchandise here, there and everywhere and getting paid very, very well to do his tours and all that kind of stuff. That's why he's asking for $500 million to come back, okay? But anyway, that's the reason why boxing in today's era isn't as prolific as it was in years gone by. It wasn't. And I do feel one of the reasons is because boxers are businessmen nowadays, and rightfully so. Rightfully so. They have to look after themselves, look after their family. They need to leave that sport with money in the bank. That's more important than legacy. It is more important than legacy. Trust me, give me money over legacy, no problem. But most importantly, give me my health, give me my faculties. Anyway, that's my thoughts. You drop me yours, click thumbs up, subscribe, and I'll catch you next video.